Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 513 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Eilon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and an author. Our fifth book just came out. It's called Perseverance and How to Be a Great Fraternity or Sorority Alumnus. So go and pick out that book on Amazon or Barnes & Noble today. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring college students together. Fun fact, I talk about hazing prevention every week with college students, and there is a sense that the new members in fraternities and sororities have to earn their membership into the organization, which typically means some sort of mental or physical abuse in order to get into the organization. The problem with that thinking is that you don't know what abuse this person has lived through as a child and how that hazing behavior is going to impact your future brother or sister. The new member process can be rigorous without hazing, and we love to share hundreds of replacement activities to help get you there. So let's talk more about abuse on today's show in order to get a sense of the impact it can have on all of us. Dawne Jacoby is a highly sought after keynote speaker driven by a passion to inspire others. She is a certified life and executive coach, leadership and development trainer, and the co-founder of Grit2Grace, an organization that helps leaders humanize their workplace, bringing empathy and compassion to the forefront. Dawne is also a co-host of His and Her Life Hacks podcast, along with her fiancé. They discuss everyday life challenges, personal stories, and successes from a his and her perspective. And between the two of them, get this, they have 10 children, ages 30 down to 13. Boy, oh boy, that's more than I can handle. So they have a lot of fun and interesting stories to share. I bet that's true. Dawne's passion for empowering young girls and women is rooted in her journey through a lifetime of adversity, beginning in childhood and following her into adulthood. At her career peak, while balancing life as a single mother to two daughters, Dawne faced a life-altering realization of what had been holding her back for 46 years. She now shares her story of resilience, strength, and the triumph of overcoming significant life challenges. Her keynotes captivate audiences, leaving them inspired and eager to learn more as she authentically connects through her personal journey woven into each message. So welcome to the show, Dawne.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Hey, I am so excited that we got introduced by a mutual friend and that now you are on the Fraternity Foodie Podcast, because I tell you what, your story is absolutely incredible. So I am so glad you're here. So thank you for that. And I'm just going to jump right in. I mean, there's really no reason to waste any time. You left home to escape abuse that was consuming you during your teenage years. Tell our audience what was going on during that time of your life.
Yeah, for sure. So, unfortunately, I was born to parents who didn't plan me, didn't want me, and pretty much told me every single day that I was hated, not wanted, and so forth. So there was a lot of verbal, emotional abuse from very early on. And then it turned physical. So at the age of 16 and a half, my mother, she was very, what I thought was bipolar, but it's actually borderline personality disorder. One minute she was, sweet and nice and asking me to go shopping. And the next minute, when I was upstairs getting ready, she had a fit of rage that had nothing to do with me, but took it out on me and grabbed me by the hair and threw me down a flight of stairs. So at the age of 16 and a half, I was thrown down a flight of stairs, and met by my father at the landing, blaming me for upsetting my mother and making her do that to me. So that was an example of what I went through as far as the emotional chaos in my life. And at that point, I was just in shock and just done. And so I just left home. I didn't have a plan in place. I just had the clothes on my back. I ran to my girlfriend's house. This was not new news. Unfortunately, my girlfriends and their mothers were used to me coming over and crying or, having stuff like this happen to me. So I just stayed at my girlfriend's for a little bit. And then I just had to start adulting. I was starting my senior year of high school in 2 short months after that. So that was in August. So September. It was early August. So September, I was starting school. Then I was turning 17 in October. And most of my friends at that point were, enjoying the beginnings of their senior year of high school. And I was simply adulting, trying to figure out life. Like, where am I going to live? What am I going to eat? How much food, how much money do I need, to feed myself, clothe myself? So I went right to work. I just started working at an insurance agency after school, and then I got a cocktail waitressing job, which was a thing then, Wednesday through Saturdays, and just thankfully made enough money to be able to pay my way. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. What a childhood. I mean, that story just, oh my gosh, unbelievable. And you climbed the corporate ladder, all of this without a college degree, which was extra challenging on top of all the abuse that you had been through. And then at the height of your career, now you're hiding a secret. You're now again living in an abusive relationship, and now you don't even know how to get out. So how did you overcome that abusive relationship and then thrive after that?
Yeah. So, what I talk a lot about, and learned myself, was that we humans repeat generational patterns, unknowingly. A lot of times it's unconscious. And it could be something as silly as doing, silly recipes like that are handed down throughout the family, or it could be something extreme like myself and my story. So, I thought that what I was living in was love. I had no idea. I had no comparison. I always knew. I looked at my friends and thought, oh, well, their family looks nice. But, I thought that was normal. So then fast forward into my adult life, younger, I would say younger adult, I would gravitate towards boys and men who had that same personality as my mother, who was the evil of the two. And so then I found myself in dysfunctional, relationships where for some reason I wore the hat of trying to fix, help, and heal these boys who had issues. I never gravitated towards the healthy ones. But then I did get married. He was not that stereotype, but he was older and he was very much like a father figure, which again, nobody really wants that. And I learned after 18 years of marriage that was not going to be for me. We grew apart and we had two beautiful daughters and we love them today and everything's healthy between us and all is good. But that was an opportunity for me to, learn. And so I moved forward, and ended up, unfortunately, in the worst relationship ever, which this is where I talk about generational patterns repeating themselves until they're fixed or healed or even brought to attention. And in my case, I didn't know. I was just operating on autopilot, doing what I thought was normal. And so I ended up in the hands of the wrong man once again. I stayed too long because I was way too loyal. That's a good quality to have, but you have to learn who to give that to. And so after I hit rock bottom, which is what you mentioned, at 46, I threw myself into therapy. And at this point, I was at the height of my career. So climbing the corporate ladder was challenging without a college degree because I had to prove myself and work extra hard. The good thing is I had developed grit and resilience and determination and all of these great qualities and skill sets through my unfortunate life of growing up and adulting at a young age. And that translated into the workplace. So I was good on that end, but I was hiding the secret at that same time that I was living in this abusive relationship yet again, and I needed to get out. Luckily, my boss, who was the president of the company that hired me, he was such a compassionate leader, and I knew it was safe to go to him and tell him what I was living in because I just needed to get it out and I needed to be done with it. And he held that space for me. He was amazing. He offered me incredible support personally and professionally, which helped me then overcome. So I had to throw myself into therapy. I mean, I went to therapy thinking I was the problem
Mm.
and told the therapist, you got to fix me because I'm the common denominator. And after hearing my story, she said, no, honey, you are the victim. Um, and that's where I learned about, repeating generational patterns unknowingly until we fix them and heal them. So it was a compilation of therapy, my faith, which is very strong. I became a life coach after receiving life coaching. journaling, exercising, doing wonderful things for my body to release, but really understanding and having the clarity around why I did what I did. It helped remove the shame because I carried a lot of shame at this point, thinking, why am I doing these things? Why am I making these mistakes? But they're not mistakes. You have to have grace for yourself. And that's where you have to do the inner child work, which is really forgiving yourself, because at that point, I only knew what I knew. So, yeah.
Wow. This is kind of where I think your work experience is really, really helpful to our college students. You talked a little bit about how empathetic your boss was, the owner of the company. And today, you and your fiance, Larry, you guys talk about humanizing the workplace. And I'm sure that was kind of the genesis of this
Yes.
talk. So I'm wondering if we can humanize our student organizations, such as the sororities and the fraternities that typically listen here. How do we go about doing that, humanizing the workplace within a student organization?
Yeah, I would say, first doing things like this, bringing awareness to the subject, which many people don't want to talk about. There's other subjects that nobody wants to talk about, but they're so necessary. And so this is one of them. So bringing awareness, creating a small support group and just normalizing it, talking about it, that's the hardest part. Um, Discussing topics such as unconscious bias, which really explains why, how we are influenced by outside forces or factors from our childhood, even. So, why we think the way we think, or do the things we do. And I think unconscious bias is something that's huge in the workplace, but also very huge in our world, in our everyday living. We operate on autopilot, just like I was doing, in our way of thinking, doing. So, yeah, if you create programs such as this, or even just communication channels in one way or the other.
Love it. Really good stuff. I also want to talk to you about relationships a little bit because I'm sure you've learned a lot through this process. Talk to us about what are the red flags of abuse?
Yeah, there's a lot, but I've written a list down, of really the top red flags. So I want to make sure I follow that. So the first one is jealousy, and the second one is control. And most of the times, those are disguised as love. So in my case, with my male relationships, um, certainly not my parents, jealousy and control disguised as love looks like, I don't want you to go out with your friends, because, I just love you so much. I want to spend so much time with you. So you're confused because you're like, but wait, like I want to go out with my friends, but he loves me so much. So I'd be disappointing him if I did go. So it's just really that reverse way of putting it out there. The next one would be extreme anger outburst, the inconsistency. And it's also followed by, a delayed apology, which many times has tears. So extreme emotion, an extreme outburst is just not normal. So a lot of people try to normalize it and say, like I did, well, he had a horrible childhood, or well, he doesn't know any better, or well, he was drinking, or whatever, right? But it's never okay to have an angry outburst to that extent. And then when it's followed up with these emotional tears, which we call crocodile tears because they're fake, they're not real, they're not authentic. That's a red flag. In the same breath, love bombing. So this obsessiveness with you, just idealizing you, like I love you so much, like everything about you, like smothering with love. It just feels uncomfortable. But if you are not a strong, confident woman, young girl, and I'm going to say young girl because it's 90% this happens to women or young girls, not men. I'm not saying it can't happen to men, but um, girls are easily influenced by something like this. And if they are not receiving love from home, many times from their father, because you think this is going to translate from dad to boy, right?
Mhm.
Um, in my case, I had both. So it was like a double whammy. But if they're not receiving that proper love from home, they're going to receive breadcrumbs of love from a boy and they're going to consider it enough. And so we don't want that. Um, Isolation. So isolation is another one where your boyfriend or significant other, they're trying to keep you away from your friends and family, because you're likely going to be talking to your friends and family about maybe things that happen, and they're going to be like, that's not normal. You should probably consider that that's unhealthy. So they don't want that. So they're going to keep you all to themselves. Criticism. When you bring it to their attention, they'll flip it on you and tell you that you're crazy, or you're being extra sensitive, or, you're being silly. They were just joking. So criticism, where it feels like it's chipping away at you, is not okay. Um, Fast forward, I'm in a very healthy, loving relationship because I did the work and I healed and spent years alone and how to love myself and all of that. I have never experienced any of these things with him, nor do I ever expect to. So it is a real thing, when I say, criticism to that extent is not okay. And same with all the other, extreme anger outbursts. Two more that I like to point out, and I'll stop there. The silent treatment. Silent treatment, I was raised with that. And I thought that was the way. I thought that's how anger was, handled and received. And it's not okay. It's okay to say, hey, you just upset me a little bit or a lot, and I need to take a break. I need to walk away from this, but let's come back together in a half an hour or an hour or whatever. So there's a plan to come back together and discuss. So that's okay. But the silent treatment where they stonewall you forever and ever is not okay. And Jekyll and Hyde personality, the highs and the lows. That's very common in this personality.
Mhm. I can see how somebody could be in an unhealthy relationship, such as the ones that you're describing here with these red flags, and they're isolated, they're apart from their family and friends, etc. So, how do you find your voice suddenly and then step into power?
That was something. So I was silenced by my abusers my whole life. So when you think of that, my parents to the world seemed like the best human beings in the world. They presented as such. They were giving and loving to the community. My mother was a Catholic and, you know, showed up as just the most high, um, holy rolling Catholic, I'll say. Let's just put it that way. And then to me, behind closed doors, she was abusing me in every which way. So the way to use your voice is to become confident within and learn how to feel safe as far as who you're using your voice to. So professionally, that leader I was telling you about who hired me, he helped me feel safe at the professional level, but even at an emotional, personal level. And he really helped me use my voice in general. So he was definitely the catalyst to that. And then that translated into my personal life. And I knew who I felt safe with, friend wise. So really just having those close friends and saying, okay, I know I can be me around them, and they're going to continue to encourage me, which is eternally going to build my self confidence and belief in myself. So it is possible, and it's through consistency, healing, over time. Definitely recommend therapy as well.
Yeah, really good advice. You mentioned something earlier talking about generational patterns and generational trauma. How do you identify those generational patterns and then figure out the impact that that's going to have on us?
Yeah, so I'm going to give two examples of that. One
Mhm.
of which is my personal story, as I already really mentioned, which is, just repeating these patterns unknowingly in the hands of men that were very mirrored my mother or father. So that would be one example. I want to give you a professional example.
Mhm.
This was a client that I was coaching. He is the president of a very large hospital, and he came to me for organizational coaching. He said to me, I am having issues leading my team. My team is their doctors. Now, remember, he's the president of the hospital. He's authority. He can make any decision or do whatever he wants. But he was having trouble leading. So I was a little confused by that. But all right, let's uncover what's getting in the way. He felt it was the doctors and the meetings were just going in a direction he wasn't okay with. So once I had met with him a couple of times, I noticed that he was getting extremely heated around, he would say, these doctors' personalities, they are really pissing me off. I can't handle it. So he was having a lot of extra energy around these personalities. So I said, may I ask you a personal question? He said, sure. And I said, do these doctors' personalities remind you of anyone in your life? Somebody who raised you, somebody prominent in your life? And he said, oh yeah, my father, and I can't stand him. So I knew this was not an organizational issue. This was a him issue. And in order for us to move forward at the organizational level, which he needed desperately because the board was coming down on him, um, I needed to really peel back the layers of the onion to his personal life story and get to the root cause of his emotions. He was being triggered by these doctors in the workplace. And if you're healed, you won't be triggered. But he wasn't healed. And he had all of this stuff in the wounds that were still inside him. When I connected the dots for him, he was brought to tears because he could not believe, in his words, that his father was controlling him still all these years later and inhibiting his ability to lead as a professional. So once I worked with him and we uncovered this and we did the hard work, it is hard work. But you have to be willing to do it, and you have to be willing to break and break down, because then comes a breakthrough, and that's where he's at. So it's a success story for sure, but that's an example.
Yeah, that's a great example. I really like how it kind of straddles the line between his personal life and his, upbringing with his dad, and now it's having an impact on his professional career. I think that's really, really interesting. And so, okay, so now he identifies that there's a pattern here between his youth and now his professional career. So, how does he then create a new blueprint and rewrite the story from here?
Yes, exactly. So we as humans are fully capable of creating a new blueprint. So I like to say that we have programming that is put on us as a child. We come into this earth, and then our parents are teaching us good and bad programming. And then we grow and start repeating these patterns, and it's a blueprint that's laid out for us. But we have the ability to walk away or change anything that is not meant for us or serving us. And although a lot of people say, well, they're family, I can't walk away. In my case, I walked away from my family about 16 years ago completely. I had to in order for me to heal. It's not, it doesn't make sense for you to stay in a toxic environment and try to heal. It's just polar opposite. So I'm not recommending everybody walks away from family or anything like that. But what I'm saying is you can take a step back and you can say, yeah, I actually do see this blueprint or programming that was kind of bestowed upon me, and I don't like it. And I'm able to say, you know what, I'm not going to do it that way. I love you, but I'm going to do it my way. And I like to say that we're change makers. We have the ability to be the change. And in my case, my daughters are my why. And I thought, I am never, ever, the abuse stops with me. I'm never repeating this ever. So my girls are going to be strong, independent, confident, hardworking, loving girls. And they are. So
Yeah. Isn't that amazing how you think like as a kid or as a young adult, like I'm never going to repeat the mistakes that my
yeah.
parents made. I
And we
totally was
just
there.
do.
I was totally there too. I know exactly what you're talking about. So thinking even before I had kids, and I have two of them, that I'm never going to repeat this. Like I knew that that was a mistake. Like this is terrible behavior, and
Yeah.
should really just end with me. Like that. That's the
Yes.
end of the line. So interesting. I also wanted to talk to you about confidence because you have a ton of confidence. You have an incredible presence. Here on stage, etc. So, how do we build confidence as college students when we might feel at that moment we really haven't accomplished much in life?
Yeah. Well, so I like to say it's a mindset and it's inner work. Inside, it's an inside job. Nobody can build that confidence for you. A lot of times, especially young girls, because they're so impressionable, we as humans, though, seek from the outside what we desire inside, in order to feel validated. And there is no possible way to build confidence unless it's done within. So you haven't had a lot of life experiences, and maybe you've had a great childhood and a great life, but something will happen to you at some point in your life, and it will make you take a step back, or it'll create a wound. And so if those wounds are not healed, they will continue to show up, like I was saying, as an adult. Developing that inner confidence will limit some of the exposure to some of the bad things that you could possibly do. So let's back up to my childhood. If I had been raised in a healthy, loving family, and I had developed confidence because maybe my parents were, telling me, oh, you're smart, you're strong, you're, whatever.
Mhm.
I'm now taking that forward, right? So now let's say I'm in front of a young boy who's showing up with all these problems and issues, right? I am not going to be attracted to that because I have inner confidence and love within myself that's like, I feel sorry for him, but I don't feel compelled to fix him or love him or help him or whatever. So if I had had that from the foundation at home, my confidence would have been strong and I would not have gone that route. So
Wow. Well, that's a really good lesson, and another reason why I tell my daughter that she's brilliant every single day.
that's awesome. And it's so much better than saying you're pretty.
No, I don't say
Um,
that. I say that you're
yeah,
brilliant and you're smart. I don't, she is very pretty, but I don't
yeah,
say that. I don't verbalize that. I say
yeah,
you are brilliant and you are smart.
yeah.
And I really put the emphasis on that. And boy, oh boy, is she killing it. She's now at Rice University in Houston, Texas. And so one of the top 10 colleges in the country. And so super, super
Nice.
blown away at her accomplishments. And she's going to do some great things. So that's
Amazing.
really, really good. Yeah. Now,
And
the
I
one
was
thing.
told, so
Mhm.
I, as a young girl, of course, as I told you, my parents didn't want me and told me all these things all day long. They told me that I would never amount to anything and I was just a pretty face. So as I grew up, I wore that, right? I walked around thinking that's all I was, that's all I was capable of. So when I then had my two daughters, I would be walking through the stores and people would say, oh my gosh, they're so beautiful. And I was like, they're brilliant, they're smart, they're,
Yeah.
and thank you. But yeah, that's secondary. So
Right. Yeah, I like the order that you have that in. Let's
yeah,
talk about how smart they are first. Really good stuff. I like it. And the one thing that I notice about you is, I mean, you are so resilient. I mean, you've been through so much, starting with just, I mean, an awful childhood experience. And so I guess I'm wondering, how do you get past all of these obstacles after they've knocked you down, I mean, a million times,
yeah.
and you continue to get back up? I mean, what's that mindset that says, I know I'm knocked down, but I'm going to get back up and try again? Like, how do you do that? You could have given up a million times already.
A million times.
Right.
Trust me. So again, I mentioned I'm very faithful, and I went to my pastor when I was at the depths of it. And I just said, I don't understand. I literally am that child that's in the boxing ring that keeps getting knocked down and back, and I get back up for some reason, and I don't understand why. Why was I put here on this earth? Was it just to be tortured? Because if so, like, I don't want any parts of this life, you know? And then she flipped it. So she reframed the thought that I had. And she said, or perhaps you're going through this so that you can help others. And you needed to become strengthened in order to have what it takes then to speak about it and help people from a knowing position, right? So I personally went through this. I know what you're talking about. So that's where I had to make the decision. How do I want to look at my life? Do I want to look at it as a victim and say, woe is me? Yeah, my life sucks and I was put here to be tortured. Or do I want to say, you know what? Maybe I am the change maker. Maybe I was put here to help others. I don't know how I'm going to do that because I'm really stuck in it right now and I'm trying to figure out how to heal. But that's where you have to dig into the grit, resilience, determination to be better and different, tenacity, right? Determination, never to give up. No matter how bad, like you're going to get knocked down in all things in life. You're going to. You have to tap into that inner grit and climb back up because the other side of it is just being sad and a victim, and that's not going to serve you.
Yeah, I love that. You were put here on earth to help others. I think that is ultimately the lesson of the day. Really good stuff. Amazing interview here today. I hope everybody gets a chance to listen and maybe go back and listen to it again because there's so many gems in here. Now, my weakness is good food. I really, really love to eat. So I know you're in Philly, and Philly has
Yeah.
some great, amazing food there. So the next time I find myself in Philly, where should I go for a great meal?
All right. So we are known for our cheesesteaks.
Uh-huh.
So again, you have to go into Philly and get it's either Pat's or Geno's Philly cheesesteak, and you ask for whiz or whiz out. And that's the cheese whiz that they put on it. So that's the thing around here. If you're looking for fine dining, so many people love Del Frisco's. You
Oh,
can
yeah.
also find that in other cities, but
Oh, yeah.
Philadelphia, they have the best ambiance, best food. I just recently went there as well with my fiance, and we went and saw the Jelly Roll concert, which was a big surprise to me and so fun. But we went there first, and we had a plethora of amazing appetizers and drinks, and that filled us up. So, and then if you're vegan, there's a place called Veg. So that's a big popular one.
Excellent. I love those recommendations. And yes, I've been to Del Frisco's. I'm a more of a Manhattan, New York City guy. And so of
Love
course they have
Manhattan.
so
Yeah.
the Del Frisco location in New York City is also really, really amazing. And what's unique about Del Frisco's there is that they have these huge, like floor to ceiling, like a 3-story building windows that's
Yes.
open to, the streets of New York City, which is so unusual because most of the steakhouses in New York City are like these dark, no windows,
Yes.
like
And they
a
have the
basement.
ice skating rink. So the
Yeah.
ice skating rink. So you get to see at Rockefeller Center. It's
Yes.
amazing.
It's
Yes, we've
amazing.
been
It's
there.
incredible. And the food is so good. The steaks, I'm telling you, you've never had a steak as good as you will
I
at Del
agree.
Frisco. And I mean, those onion rings, they're like the size of your head.
I know.
Those things come out. And I'm like, what is this?
Yes.
Just incredible. Just an incredible experience. And so I agree with you. Del Frisco's is really good. All
That's
right.
great.
So if our college student listeners, if they want to book you to speak on their college campus, where should they go to connect with you?
Yeah. So my website, and also they can connect with me there, would be www.grit and then the number 2 grace.com. Grit to Grace represents the process one must go through from, going through the yucky, as I explained today, to the grace and the beauty of life. So
Fantastic. Well, I got to tell you, Dawn, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for just being open and honest and transparent about all the things that you've been through. I know that that's not necessarily an easy thing to kind of talk about, but I'm glad that you did because I think a lot of the college student listening, I mean, they're really going to see, some of the same things that you've gone through in their own lives. And then that's going to give them the hope and the resilience that they can overcome, just like you have. So thank you for sharing all of that.
you're welcome. I hope it helps somebody.
Absolutely. I know it will. And to our listening audience, if you enjoyed this conversation with Dawn, I want you to like it on social media and I want you to share it with other people that you know that have been through the ringer as well, that really need to hear the words from Dawn. So thank you so much for joining us. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.